afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, we are excited to be here with you all today, so I'd like to welcome you to Hashtag Goals Breaking Into Tech. My name is Lynn Stanfield, and I have the honor of serving as the Global External Relations Manager at Apple, focusing on inclusion and diversity. I am joined here today by an amazing panel of women who are going to share for us over the next hour their journey, their stories, which are going to inspire and continue to empower us. We've had an amazing day, wouldn't you agree? And let me tell you, these ladies will not disappoint. So I am so honored to be here with you all today. And I'd like to go ahead and transition into our introductions. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. And in your introduction, please share how you transitioned into tech. How did you get into tech or media? And why don't we start with you, Danae?
Hi, I'm Danae Williams. I'm the Vice President of Digital Media Strategy at Macy's.
And she looks fabulous today, right?
Thank you. I'm wearing Macy's. And that was my work tribe. And if your work tribe does not turn up for you, throw them away. So thank you, ladies. But my journey, I'm in the digital media space, so media and marketing. And digital media is still a relatively new industry. We're only about 20 some odd years in. So I did not start off in this industry. I actually started off as a medic in the military. So I like to say I could kill you and bring you back to life with the same two fingers. But from there, you know, I worked various jobs, decided I wanted to be an actress, went to an acting college, et cetera, et cetera. So my path was not a linear path into this industry. But I say that to make the point that digital media is ripe for taking in people from all walks of lives, all paths of education. There are jobs and things that need to be executed throughout digital media that you may not be aware of. And so I'm here to talk to you about that today and just kind of open it up. And then following, if you have questions, I'm happy to work with you and talk with you about what some opportunities are.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kenyatta Walker, and I work for the title sponsor, ADP. And with ADP, I'm in our global product and technology group where I run client product support globally for US and Canada. So the technology industry was one, I like to tell this story, or my daughter likes to hear it. When I was actually in high school, I was going to be unlike these ladies, I didn't transition, I started that way. I was going to do a physical therapist career. And I remember to get out of class, I took the ASVAB, which is the course or the test you take in order to get into the military. And I remember going around, because that was another opportunity to get out of class, and I was talking to all of the different officers that came to present to us. And I distinctly remember talking to one of the Marines. And he said, you have great math scores, and you can just do about anything you wanted to do except be an engineer.
Wow.
And so for me, I'm originally from Mississippi, as my bio states, but my mom being rooted in a very Christian family, Matthew 19:26, with God, all things are possible. So this was new to me, that's something I couldn't do. So I say it's a blessing, because it actually inspired me to actually look at technology as a field. I found out that there was money there for people who looked like me, and that really started my career into STEM and into technology. And interestingly enough, I do say I hold nothing against the Marines. I married one, for the record.
Hi, I'm Janice Glover-Jones, and I'm here with Dell. Where's Dell? Okay. All right. Well, I was wondering where my help was. Okay. And I'm actually a little different. I am actually a government employee. I work for the Defense Intelligence Agency. I'm out on a year's assignment into Dell as a government employee. So my path into tech was not a linear path. I actually graduated from high school and I was working and I was going to school to be a nurse. And I had did my nursing programs to the time it was time for me to do my clinicals, at which time they had changed the program. I had already bought a house and it became an economics game. I had to pay the mortgage. And so I went into my counselor and said, listen, I want to graduate from school and I need a program where I don't lose a whole lot of credits. And we came up with software and coding. And I did that and I graduated never with the mindset, the passion, the idea to go and work in tech. I continued in my career in the federal government. Ultimately, I ended up in finance. I was a budget analyst, became a finance senior executive supporting our CIO. I learned everything I could about the inside and outside of the tech budget, and I ultimately became the CIO for our organization.
Impressive. Please join me in welcoming these amazing women. So each of you shared kind of your journey, even your educational journey and how you got into your various industries. What are some things, I kind of want to go back to, how we can inspire specifically very young women. So Kenyatta, you mentioned, that counselor said, well, you can do everything except, right? Unfortunately, there are probably still a lot of young women of color that's hearing that today. What are some things that we can do as women as we give back? Because we are professionals, we are in the C-suite, we have families, but we also serve our communities. So I kind of want to start there. What are some things that we can do as we're reaching back specifically around K-12 with K-12 programs? And I'll put it out there for each of you to answer.
I'll start because I have the luxury, and I'm looking back at the Women in Technology president, of sitting on the advisory board for a wonderful organization in Atlanta that does just that, and we service from the classroom to the boardroom. And the exciting thing about Women in Technology, and the reason I serve, is because I actually have a middle school daughter who is actually interested in coding, and she shows up and she's starting to participate in these events. But I think the biggest thing is really starting young, so that you don't have someone later in life telling them what they cannot do. And I'm really proud and I'm excited to partner with that organization because I feel as if it's one of those many ways to give back and to make sure that if you don't have a mother, like I did, that you have someone that is going to inspire you that you can when others will tell you you can't.
And one of the things that I say is, people will tell you things what you can't do, but the onus is on you of what you allow to play in your head and then who you choose to believe. If you own what they have told you, then you will not make it. When I first got promoted to senior executive in the federal government, I had a colleague call me, and people were calling to offer their congratulations. But this particular person looked at me and said, you do know that the only reason you got the promotion is because you are a token. And he was serious. Now, if I didn't understand or I did not believe that I got the position because of my merit, and I didn't know what my value was and what I brought to the table, that would have allowed me to not be successful in my career. But I did not let that thought play in my head. And so that's the best thing that we can tell young people of color, whether they're male or female. Don't let what someone else's opinion of you, and oftentimes it comes from a place of ignorance, define who you are and what you evolve into.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that's a challenge in the digital media space is awareness, right? So I liken what the children of today think that they think that the range of opportunity is to when we were in school, right? You wanted to be, little boys wanted to be a rapper or a basketball player. right? Nobody told them you can actually own that basketball team, right? You can own a record label. And so the kind of modern day version of that is I hear a lot of kids saying, I want to be a blogger, I want to be an influencer, I want to be a YouTube star, and that's all fine. I actually encourage that. My son wants to make a YouTube video, let's go. I'll buy the equipment, set you up, let's go. But the reality is that the numbers don't indicate that everyone is going to be successful in that realm, right? Everyone's welcome and it's open, and I think there's a great opportunity there, but I think that it is my responsibility to have the conversations with the kids in the schools and say, did you know that behind the scenes there's someone actually coding? Did you know that there's someone that actually has to be responsible for that ad that you saw and how it got there and why you're seeing that one and not another one? Did you know that you can be the leader of dictating things like that and managing multi-million-dollar budgets? These are things that they're just not aware of. And when you talk to them about things that they do care about, like managing budgets and making decisions and being leaders, they actually get excited and interested in it. And it opens up an opportunity to really say, okay, so let's talk about what you could really be doing, right? And how you can really be powerful. And I really take pride in having those conversations and making myself available to the younger people to open up those doors for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. You know, Janice, I want to go back to something that you said earlier, how you arrived into your position, and I'd like for all of our panelists to comment on this, because this is something that is certainly not unique to you. It's certainly not unique necessarily to your industry either. But we do know that as Black women, the further up you go, you see fewer and fewer women in many industries and very, very few women of color, right? So that can be very alienating. It can be very lonely. And I would love for you all to just share, you know, how do you deal with that? Because that, obviously, it can take a personal toll on you, but you still push through it. So if maybe you can share some words of inspiration and what it takes to push through.
Yeah, it definitely takes tenacity, relentless, and for me, it went back to my core values. So faith is one of my core values. I was born and raised in the church, and so I spent a lot of time praying to make it through. The higher you go, and when you ascend to the C-suite spot, it's lonely at the top. I had my Aaron and my hers who held my arm up, and I was grateful for them to be on my team, but they worked for me. So there was still a level of information that I could not share with them just simply because of the relationship. So there were a lot of pressures that I was dealing with, and it's unfortunate, you always don't have the support from your peers or your colleagues and your other sisters. And so you become more insular and you take things in and you hold it in. And it's through good friendships that I was able to talk to people and to get a fresh perspective. And I have one girlfriend in particular who I always say she wears rose-colored glasses, right? And I would just call her and say, okay, I need the glasses right now because I'm not seeing the goodness that's gonna come out of where I am right now. And normally we'll talk. By the end of that, I feel relieved. We'll pray together. But you gotta put a support system around you. I have an amazing husband who's here today with me, who was also my support system. He may not have understood a word that I was saying when I came home, but he listened, and he paid attention. And there were moments when the game was on, and I'm like, okay, I need you to listen right now. So I would make it quick, so you can go back to the game, right? So you gotta know that. And so it's having that, but I would say my foundation that carried me through a lot was my faith.
Thank you.
I would definitely have to echo Janice's sentiments. It's faith. And I think it's being courageous and fearless, right? I'm a firm believer God didn't give us the spirit of fear. So it's hard sometimes because you do have fear, and I won't say that I'm immune, but I also know that I've learned throughout my career to lean most where it's uncomfortable. And so I lean a lot where it's uncomfortable. And it's funny, you talk about the husband. My husband, who I've been married 14 years Tuesday, he really pushes me towards those areas that are uncomfort zones. He pushes me, I'm naturally an introvert, no one will believe it, but he pushes me where I need to be pushed, and he really does support that. And he also helps with that holistic piece of our family and our household, so that at the end of the day, I'm very reluctant, happy to say that when I come home, it's a happy home and it's not a place of contention.
Right. Yeah, just to kind of build on that, you know, you always need a place of grounding. And your squad, your girlfriends may not work in the same field that you do. They may not have the same level of education. But at the end of the day, when all of that stuff, you know, kind of just falls by the wayside, they know you, right? And so even if you can't share with them critical business information, you could tell them, you can be vulnerable with them. You could say, I am concerned. There are some things that were shared with me that I don't know how to manage this. You know, I'm really feeling inadequate. And those are the times where you say, you know, thank God for my squad, because they hold you up, they prop you up, they remind you how fierce you are, you know, and I can't say enough about just having those people in your corner. It's not about having, you know, a certain type of person. It's about having those people that know you at your core. And you guys mentioned your husband. Shout out to my husband, 2.5 years in. But similar, he's been there the my entire journey on in this industry, in this career. And there have been times where he was just like, I don't know. But he knew enough to know that I needed nothing more than a foot massage, right? Nothing more than just bring me some tea and leave me alone. So these are things that are all critical. At the end of the day, you know, we are charged with managing very delicate information, with leading teams, with being fearless and courageous. But these are all the things that we have to put on to go outside the door. For me, it's about when you take all that stuff off, who's there for you.
And I will add, there was one occasion, I had a series of, it wasn't just a bad day, it was like a bad month. And I left there, I was completely drained. Like, I don't even remember the ride home. That's how drained I was. And I had reached a point where I was like, you know what? This is not worth it. I'm just ready to walk away and find something else. An hour later, I got the sweetest email from my boss, who just, he gives you what you need when you need it, right? And that email gave me the strength to get up the next day and to go back in. And when I went to him, he didn't know what was going on. When I went to him and shared with him, he just told me, he's like, Janice, you were on my mind my entire commute home. And I felt like I just needed to tell you how I valued you and what you brought to the team. And I know that that was nobody but God.
That's right.
Nobody but God.
Absolutely. So technology and media are really changing our world. And I want to go back to something that you said, Danae, earlier around jobs that are available, right? And so the U.S. Department of Labor issued a report that basically stated that by 2050, 40% of the jobs that exist today will no longer exist, right? And so there are jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago, right? Chief listening officer. Who knew that you could get paid to listen, right?
Video games.
Right, exactly.
Video games all day.
That's right. So, you know, app developer, you know, so many new, and media and technology are really changing that. What are some skills that women specifically need to have as these changes are taking place so that they can begin to break into our industries?
Yeah, before I touch on the skills, I just want to kind of contextualize that a little bit, because I think that those stats can be scary if you don't have your head wrapped around it, right? Just to put it in perspective a little bit, there are jobs that exist today that didn't exist 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Jobs that existed 50 years ago are obsolete today. So it's an ongoing evolution. It's always happening, right? So that's one piece of information that you should always have in your back pocket, just to contextualize a little bit. The other piece of it is automation. Automation is a big topic, and we should definitely touch on it here. Because people think, oh, you know, they're going to automate every single job function, and there's going to be no need for humans contact, right? Not true. The true best use case for automation is to allow humans to work smarter, faster, more strategically, right? And so we should embrace automation. If your boss says, oh, we're going to be automating the new whatever system at work, you should be thinking about it in terms of how does this make me? You know, what tasks do I hate doing or that are big time sucks for me that are going to be allowing me to free up my time to think better and bigger and motivate my colleagues to do the same. So that's how I think we should be thinking about, you know, this evolution and these kind of stats and what automation means for us. But to answer your question in terms of skills, I think that there are certain transferable skills that we should all think about that we bring to the table. A, being nimble, right? Being able to be nimble and flexible and roll with the punches and not be so focused on your specific skill set and your specific job, right? Everybody likes to say, they don't pay me enough, it's not my job. We are no longer in a position to do that. I think those type of attitudes are going to put people out of jobs faster than automation will.
Yep.
Exactly.
Right? You have to be willing to move and change and understand how your role is remaining relevant within the changes that you're seeing.
I think I want to piggyback off of that story about remaining relevant. I remember I started my career at Accenture as a software developer, and I remember going in at that time, like early 2000s, they would send you to a central location for training. And I remember looking in one of the sessions, and they talked about being a developer, you could get 1/8 of the cost, right? So they said they could get 8 developers for every 1 US developer. And it's very important, 2 things that you just said that we expand upon is pay attention to the signs and the trends. If I had decided that I liked to code and I was going to stay a coder, I would have probably been out of a job. But I decided that had to be a different trend. For me, I did the math. Back then, it was like I made 80 grand. They're going to get 10 people to replace me. This is not going to work. So for me, it was very important to pay attention to what is happening in technology and what were those trends and signs. And then when we talk about skill sets of what's happening today with digital media, there's also going to be 500,000 tech jobs available by 2026. So although jobs are going away, you have a lot of opportunity in technology. And the most important thing that people miss out on is that technology is a business strategy, and it is integrating into every single thing that we do. When I think about the change, when I was younger, I remember there was a ban, right, when you went to Disneyland. When my daughter was 5, about 7 years ago, there was the fingerprint with a card. Last year I took her to Disneyland, there was an armband. And it's all about security enhancement, but it's a business strategy. So to your point, although technology will change the way we do things, you have to also think about what am I going to do differently as the technology is changing.
Yeah. And common through all of the technological change that's going on is data. I mean, in the last 2 years, has generated the most data in the earth. And that's going to continue. So the skills that you would need in data literacy, understanding data analysis, and data visualization, I don't care what industry you work in, I don't care what field you work in, whether you are an engineer, an infrastructure engineer, or a software engineer, or you are a finance person, financial tech, and IT is taking over almost every industry there is, and data is that common denominator, and I would say that that's critical. And then to play on what was said earlier, along with those soft skills is emotional intelligence. The ability to be able to communicate with people, because as we heard here in the conference, right, it's all about relationships and deep relationships. And Things ain't gonna always go the way that you have planned, but your ability to manage those difficult situations and remain sound and know how to work those soft skills, critical thinking, and think about your job you do today. How many of you do your job where it's just you? How many other people do you depend on to deliver your outcome that you have to deliver? So having those soft skills are critical.
I think you're right. Everything we talked about today, even the previous panel, your allies, et cetera, even in technology, although sometimes we're cast as in the corner individuals like Office Space, you have to integrate allies, sponsors, you've got to network, you've got to do relationship building, because you can very easily get left in that corner and technology and things have passed you by.
So once you break into your industry, media or technology, how do you then thrive and gain advancement? What are your thoughts around, now that I'm here, I've arrived, how do I get to where you are? So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is to suspend disbelief immediately when you enter into the digital marketing world. Give you an example. I was a few years in, and I'm dating myself quite significantly, but I was a few years in. I was a media planner, and all of my media planning wisdom, this sales rep walks in, and he says, all right, so I want you to hear me out. I want to sell you something. I think you should buy some ads on this platform. It's a new platform, and people are going to create videos, and then other people are going to watch those people's videos, and we're going to monetize it, and you can put ads on it, and you can get all your clients to put their ads on it. And we're like, this is what? This is never going to work. Fast forward, what was it? YouTube. So suspend disbelief, from the door, because the industry is evolving so quickly, so rapidly. What is fresh and new today is old news tomorrow, literally. Social media platforms are developing and being used and run into the ground within months and then never to hear from again. When's the last time you heard of a Vine video, right? So you have to be willing to believe that something is possible in this industry, and that lends itself to your skill set as well. Does my skill set that I have walking in this door allow me to be able to be the person that is coding in a year? Yes. Yes. Does my skill set that I walk in this door with allow me to be the person who's making the strategic decisions on how this digital media budget is going to be spent, because I understand the landscape and I understand what's working, what's not working? Yes. I think a lot of times we look at the people who are in leadership or who hold these positions when we come into the door, and we think that it's so impossible, or it's going to be such a long road to attain it. But if you just put it in perspective again, this industry is so young, right? You have people who started a business in this industry 2 years ago and who are multimillionaires or very successful, right? But you also have people who walked into this industry maybe 15, 20 years ago, who very quickly understood that the skill sets that I brought to the table could be applied. Skill sets such as being very analytical, being nimble, understanding trends, understanding what I'm looking at and how it applies to building back to company objectives, things like that. So it's very possible to be at an entry-level position today and be running strategic point on something in a matter of a few years. So suspend disbelief is the first thing that I say. I could go on and on about other things, but I'll open it up to the other ladies as well.
I was definitely going to say agree with rethink what's possible, but the second one you kind of harped on was just being a continuous learner. So don't get complacent. So it may be weird to some people because sometimes it takes me, when I do get a promotion, it's a very hard thing for me to accept because I'm always thinking about what's next. I know I can't get comfortable in the seat that I'm in. I've got to continue to reinvent myself and continue to figure out what's next and what's new. And I get accused sometimes of being an extreme optimist because I really do think, oh yeah, we can do that, we can do that. So I have to also make sure that I temper that a tad bit, but I think making sure that you're rethinking what's possible, don't put limits, no limits, right? And then also just being a continuous learner, because we always have to keep learning. And the moment you get complacent, you're in trouble.
And to that complacency thing, one of the things that I would say that the practice that I've gotten into is annually, every year, I write a new vision, right? And so you heard that said earlier today about writing that new vision. Even if I haven't accomplished everything that I had in the previous vision, but writing a new vision, and that plays into suspend the disbelief, that plays into continuous learning. If you think you have arrived, then that's it for you. You have arrived. And there's no place else to go, right?
There's a quick joke. We do a vision board in our home. And I remember one day my daughter walked by my vision board. It was like October, because I do it in the beginning of the year. And she said, Mom, you need new goals. You've achieved all this stuff on here. And I was like, okay, baby. And she's like, or you need to dream bigger.
You need to dream big.
I was like, yes, ma'am.
Out of the mouths of babes.
There you
right?
go. So I'm going to try to dream bigger.
What are some things that our audience members can think about to distinguish themselves in your industries, whether it's vis-a-vis, resumes, profiles? How can they brand themselves so that they stand out a little bit more? And I know that this is your lane, and you're slaying your lane. So, Danae, why don't we start with you on this?
Oh, I love that slay your lane. That's been sitting with me all morning, ever since this morning. If you're trying to break into the industry, you're probably not starting from scratch. I think that this has kind of been the undercurrent of my message for this entire discussion. You're not starting from scratch. If you're sitting here, then you have established yourself in a career. And if you want to shift gears and break into digital, I think that it is important that you sit down and you understand what skills are transferable, right? When you're writing out your resume in the digital media world, it's all about, and I don't think that this is isolated to the digital media world, but it is very critical. We don't want to know about what you did. I led a group of 10 people. Okay. You led a group of 10 people. Let's quantify that. What did those 10 people do? Right? Were you able to optimize sales for those 10 people from X% to X%? Because those are the things that indicate that you have the wherewithal and the understanding that digital media is a marriage of art and science and analytics and data, right? And so while you did something that was very cool and creative, or you did something that was that got a lot of kudos, what were the numbers behind it, right? How did it ultimately tie back to business objectives? The more that you can put that type of language into your resume, the more you're going to stand out amongst other candidates that are trying to make that shift into the industry, because you're demonstrating that you have those, you come in with those skills already in place. Update your social media. I cannot stress it enough. Please do not apply for a social media job and not have a Facebook page, right? Now, I'll be the first to tell you, after, when I'm working all day talking to people about Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and Pinterest and all of that, sometimes it's the very last thing I want to do when I get home. All right, so can I tell you that in my personal life, I use these platforms consistently and daily? At this stage in my life, no. But I knew that when they first came onto the scene, I needed to get on them, I needed to get immersed in them, I needed to understand them from a consumer perspective as well as from a business perspective. And so I'm regularly on them because I need to continue to learn and evolve. And those platforms evolve consistently daily, sometimes. So it's very critical that you become familiar with the platforms that you are intending to represent. It's very critical that you make sure you clean up any platforms that you already have. But I think that's just standard across the board for business. But yeah.
I was actually going to go back to Bishop Bishop McKenzie. I'm not going to mess up the first name. Bishop McKenzie this morning. So she talked about two things, and I think it was, no, or maybe it was Seth, about being, oh no, it was Bishop, reactive versus proactive. So in addition to the numbers, I'm a big fan of seeing where you are proactively looking at things and not reactive. Because it's one thing for, my pet peeve is if you come in and you do exactly what I told you to do, you add no value to me. I pay you to think, and I need you to come with a collaboration. So I look for people that are proactive in their resumes, and that could be across any number of things where you took initiative, you took the, you stood up for something, you saw a problem, and you came up with a way to solve it that was innovative and creative. So that's one of the biggest things for me, is moving from reactive to proactive, still while remaining, as Bishop says, active.
And for me, companies want to hire the right person, for the company. And we invest a lot into interviewing and scouting out talent and looking for talent. And you want someone that you want to get your return on investment. So one of the things that I look for is problem solvers. So you heard that said, right? I want somebody that's not going to run from a problem, that you don't have to tell, here's a problem. The reactive, they see it, they anticipate it before a problem happens. But then there's also, I'm looking for a person, you might have applied for this particular position, and in the interview, I'm also looking at how nimble are you, how agile are you, can you fulfill 3 other jobs. I might know that in 6 months somebody is going to retire, so I'm also looking at you. Are you a fit that you can actually move up into that slot? Because I know I got a hole coming. So while you're interviewing and you're thinking about that, also back to the dream bigger, you need to think beyond what you're applying for. And really you need to think beyond, can I take the person's job who is interviewing me? That's really where you need to be at.
Don't tell them that. No, you should be thinking that,
You
but
should
don't
be.
tell them.
Yeah, but don't tell. Well, I did that in an interview. Well, I was asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I said, sitting in your seat.
I know that's right.
I absolutely did.
There you go.
I became the CIO.
One other thing specific to digital media that I can't stress this enough. There are so many scams out there.
Oh, yeah.
When you're talking about how do I get a leg up? How do I set myself apart? There's so many. Learn digital media in 6 weeks for $1,500. Please do your research. I'll give you one really solid resource that offers ongoing, consistent, quality training in various areas. It's called the Interactive Advertising Bureau, IAB.com. Go there, look into what they have to offer. That IAB sets the standards for digital marketing across the board, and that's a great place to start. They do have classes that you can take online to help with just entry-level understanding of the industry and of the space. I would highly recommend that you look into them. Those are great things to also have on your resume, but don't fall victim to the scams that are out there.
Earlier today, we heard the question, are we preparing America for the future of work? Right? We kind of talked through where we see these employment trends going in the future, right? So as you stated, Danae, the equal number of jobs that are being eliminated are being replaced by newer jobs in the future. So as we reflect upon that question, are we preparing America for the future of work? I know I reflected very deeply around some of the programs that we have at Apple, where we're investing in early pipeline initiatives through our Connect Ed programs or through partnerships with Dream Corps to assist with coding, lots and lots of various programs, our Thurgood Marshall College Fund internship program. From your perspective and in your industry, are we preparing America for the future of work? And what might we be able to do maybe a little better collectively as a sisterhood?
In my industry specifically, I think we have a little ways to go. I think we've gotten comfortable with the fact that consumers in general are very familiar with being online, with being on their mobile devices, with being on social media platforms. And so they have a consumer perspective, but they don't have insight, in my opinion. There is not enough awareness and insight into what it takes to drive these consumer experiences. And I think that we could be doing so much more to educate from elementary school all the way up through high school and into the colleges. One thing that I am particularly proud of is that when I was working at MediaCom, a media agency, I had the opportunity to be the representative at HBCU's career fairs and just go and talk to them about my experiences and what was available out there. And just the reception at that time was overwhelming. Now you have people in, you have actual courses you can take in college, and they do have a little bit more awareness there. But I think that there's so much more that we can be doing just in our communities and in our schools. But yeah, there's a lot of work to do there.
Well, we want to give a little bit of time for our audience to ask a few questions. So do we have any questions from the audience at this time? Don't be shy. I know it's the end of the day. Okay. Yes, please, if you'll step to the microphone.
Good afternoon. First, my name is Ivory Banks. I'm actually a small business owner of called I5 Technology Group. So first and foremost, I want to thank the panel for sharing their melanated magnificence this afternoon. As a business owner, especially in the technology field, a lot of the pool of people consists of a certain demographic, especially when you're looking for senior talent. Kenyatta, I'd like to use your earlier anecdote as an example, but I posed this question to the entire panel. If you could go back to when you were that 19-year-old and you were aspiring in the technology field, what type of boss would you have wanted to have, or what type of organization would you want to be a part of that would cultivate your career in technology?
Wow, that's a great question. I've never thought of that one. So I've been very, very fortunate throughout my career where I've actually worked for companies that embrace diversity and inclusion. Okay. So for example, I even started my career at Georgia Pacific. I did a internship or a co-op, and the people, and maybe it was a token, I don't know, but they were looking for individuals like me. So I actually have been very fortunate and very blessed to work for some really good companies, and where I didn't, I left. But I started my career at Accenture, which is here today, and they are a pillar of diversity and inclusion. And so I actually got very fortunate in that arena, so it's kind of hard for me to think about that. I think one of the positive things is when I look at the company that I'm at now, ADP, I can look around and there are other women of color. You see women like Debbie Dyson. So in the past, I may have been in an arena where I was aspiring to be by myself or I was looking outward. I have a lot of really good examples within ADP of individuals who look like me and can help cultivate my career. So that's really exciting. So I would probably say if I had to think about it, I'm where I need to be right now for a great company to work, and I would look at companies that are here at this conference that are really embracing and sending women that are embracing diversity.
Thank you.
I think early on in my career, I had one supervisor that I went in and someone on the team wasn't delivering their part of it. And that supervisor actually sat me down and he said, "So Janice, the onus is really on me because then maybe I have that individual in the wrong role." And he shared that with me that as a supervisor, as a leader, as a manager, my job is to ensure that the people are in the right role in accordance with their skills and their ability to deliver. So he told me, don't be upset with him. Let me figure this out. Maybe it's my issue that I need to, and not him actually being able, just blowing you off and not delivering on his end. That stuck with me, and I was very, very young in my career, so I've been fortunate to have good, I would say, leaders and managers kind of right out of the gate. I've been blessed in that
So you
regard.
would say having a leader that is supportive.
I would, yes, have a leader that was supportive, but also what he did was he owned his responsibility as a
Yes.
leader, and that's what it showed me at a very early age.
When I joined Macy's, you know, I came in under a phenomenal leader, Bernice Clark, and a woman of color, a powerhouse in her own right. And up until that point in my career, I had always run into other black women in leadership who took the position of, I can be the only one.
That one.
It wasn't until I was introduced to Bernice Clark that I was shown that there is a better way. She took me under her wing. She showed me that we can be great together. Let me show you the ropes. This Macy's is an enormous company, extremely overwhelming for anyone coming in at executive level, trying to navigate. She helped me to navigate it. She let me fall down. She picked me up, dusted me off. And that's the type of leader that I want to be as people come in and into Macy's trying to navigate. I think that Macy's does a great job at cultivating diversity and leadership and diversity and leadership. And I'm so proud to be a part of that. And I just hope that I can do for other people what she did for me.
Thank you.
You know, earlier today, Cent Marshall, I believe, talked a little bit about diversity and inclusion and using it as a business case, right? Because when you are creating products that are reflective of the communities that you're selling them in or services, then you're attracting that's contributing to your bottom line. Share with us a little bit why corporate culture really matters when we're looking at diversity and inclusion, and maybe any insights that you may have. You all work for amazing companies, right, and are leaders and contributors. But as we look at diversity and inclusion initiatives, and as leaders, what can we do to ensure that we're bringing in talent, very, very, very diverse talent? So thoughts there.
Yeah, it's interesting. In one of the last panel, this day has been so long, I don't know which panel session it was, but in one of the panel sessions, someone stood up and said, now that I'm in a leadership position, why is it or how is it that it's expected of me to carry my leadership role, but also reach back and identify new D&I talent? So after I gathered myself and didn't disrupt the place, you know, one of the things that I said to my team is that it's something that I say to my son all the time when he's complaining about his homework. You don't have to do your homework. You get to do your homework. You're a black woman in a place of leadership, in a position to reach back, because I don't believe in reaching down, right? You're reaching back. And you're bringing people with you. So it shouldn't be another task in your day. It should be the fabric and the fiber of who you are.
Yes.
Right? So I don't understand how you can separate your own existence and knowing what you had to go through to get here and say, I don't know why I would have to do this for someone else. You get to do this for somebody else. This is a privilege. We are in a place of privilege.
Madeline Albright's quote reigns and stands out, right? And she says there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. And I remember when you think about that, right, like on that career journey, I am a continuous learner. And there became a point in my career where I had to figure out, I was like, okay, I'm bored, I'm not learning anything. And that's when I really, through, my faith, discovered that it's not about me anymore. So leadership is not about me anymore. There's very little other than encourage and inspire that I do on a daily basis. I might write a few PowerPoints, but it's not about me. It's about the brown girls, the women, the men of all races and colors that come to talk to me about my career, my experiences. And it's about the next round of leaders and the future leaders that I'm developing. So I've just learned it's not about me on this journey anymore. And so I'm here to serve. And if that service means giving back, it's like I think I may have left out when they said that.
Yeah, so for me, it's about servant leadership, right? And even when you think about all of the companies that are out here in the tech industry, if you just look at their customers are diverse. The world is diverse. And so just from a bottom line perspective that if you can't send people in to sit with the customers and they can't never find anybody to look like them, then you're not going to be successful. And it's incumbent upon us, and it's been said, right? None of us got to where we are without standing on the shoulders of someone else. And I would share this with some people who ascribe to the fact of, well, you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Well, somebody gave you the boots and somebody gave you the straps, okay? So I don't ascribe by that because, and we can look through it. History is a good teacher to show you that people help people, and that's the only way that you're going to make it in this world, by helping other people.
Absolutely.
The only thing I would add is that I would look at companies, but there's one thing, right, to look at because you can hire some people. Well, who are they hiring and the quality of their hiring and the retention rate? And are they developing? Are they getting promoted? Because of what happens a lot of times, especially in technology, is that women of color, they'll get us in. We can code, we can do the support work, we can be in the corner doing the grunt work, but are you getting promoted? Right? Debbie talked about 35% of the women that she bought with her this time were promoted. So are you actually promoting and growing that talent? Because that's what allows people to stay with the company. So getting in the door is one thing, but are you growing? And as one of my colleagues gave me this plant that says, grow girl, grow. Like, are we growing our talent is another important factor there.
Yeah. And getting them in the door, what roles are they in? Right?
That's right.
Putting them in the warehouse is one thing, but putting them in a position of leadership and decision making is yet another. And we continually have to fight and go in those arenas to get them at the table where the decisions are being made.
Don't let anybody marginalize your skill set because they love to put you in the corner of support on the phone. Yeah.
That's true. Thank you. I see we have another question.
Hey there, that's me. Another question. Greetings. My name's Tiana from PepsiCo. My question is this idea of globalization, of the importance of folks being well-rounded and diverse thinking across the world. When it comes to tech, the U.S. has been a forefront leader, right, in developing this. A lot of the tech companies that have started have been from the U.S. and based in the U.S. China is obviously an example of a country that is phenomenally, in many ways outpaced many other countries in the world when it comes to their development. What are some things that we can still learn from other folks across the globe, even though we tend to be, a top leader in tech? And then conversely, as we think about certain people groups that tend to be more well represented in tech outside of just traditional, white men, are there some things that we can learn in how we advance our own community and things that we can pick up from them and how they've been able to rise into that place?
Excellent.
I think one of the reasons that China is, right on our heels is it boils down to discipline. And it starts at a very, very early age. The children in China, learning math and learning science is not an option. Their public education looks a whole lot different than ours do. And even with we not having the same quality of public education, the onus is on us the mothers, the fathers, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, to ensure that our younger generation get those math and those science skills. So whether their school is not teaching it, there is so much that's out there, Khan Academy, YouTube, free coding classes, all of that stuff is available. There are games now that are geared towards STEM where they don't even know that they're learning STEM. And so we have to, if we know this is what exists, then let's go ahead and ensure that our children, the ones that are behind us, the ones that are our future, are going to have the best possible shot. And I think that's what we can take from China, is their discipline and their zero tolerance for you're not going to do well in this.
Agreed.
I agree.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I know we are nearing, I think we've got one more question.
Hello, my name is Michelle. I work at Macy's. I just have a question for these fearless leaders. Do you feel like leadership is something that needs to be ingrained as like onboarding in corporations? Like, people get promoted sometimes, but they lack the skill of leadership. Leadership is something that can be taught, but do you feel like that is something that is missing? When we were talking about skill sets, transferable skill sets, do you feel like that's something that needs to be fully ingrained in corporations?
I start by saying one thing, because I think back to my daughter again, and one of the things we always told her when she was younger is be a leader, not a follower. But we'd also tell her that good leaders are also good followers, right? So that's a little bit confusing for her, but it's understanding there are sometimes you should follow, right? But there are sometimes you need to stand on your own. So I do think you should have some concepts of leadership early on. I think what, in my personal opinion, people lack leadership because they don't see the big picture. What I find is individuals will come into an organization, you get trained on your job and your task, but you don't understand how your task or your job ties back to the CEO's scorecard. You don't understand why what you're doing matters. And one of the things that I found personally is that individuals aren't always successful as they evolve into leadership because they can't see the big picture. They can't see the business strategy. They can't tie those things together. And I think that more importantly, it's being able to explain to them, you have an SLA, you have a job, right? You have a metric, but let me explain to you how this ties back to the bigger picture. That's my perspective.
I think one of the things that I'm excited to see changing in large corporations is the notion of someone, let's call it aging out of a job title, right? So you've been doing this very tactical job for so long that now you're deemed to be the supervisor of this job, but there's no leadership training that goes along with that. And I think that's, historically, it's just, promoted bad habits in the leadership space and creates makes it hard for people who actually have worked to cultivate the skill of leadership. It is a skill. It is something that you continually learn. Leadership for one person is not the same for leadership for another person. And so I think in the last, I would say 5 to 7 years, I've seen a transition where people are no longer just being promoted because they've held a certain position for a long time. And we are starting, I know at Macy's we are starting to take more of a focused role in cultivating those skills prior to advancing someone into a role in which they are responsible for the success of whole departments and how those departments ladder up into the overall success of the business and growing those people.
Yeah. And I think a good part of leadership is also recognizing that there are just some people who are not good at being leaders, and they shouldn't be leaders, right? It's the Peter principle, right? You can be a great engineer, you can be a great technician, you can be a great finance analyst, you can be a great marketing person, whatever it is. I now take you and promote you into a leadership. You have now hit your highest level of incompetence. And if they are not, we have set them up for failure. And so part of that is, when we recognize we made a mistake, and even on you or the individual, when they recognize they made a mistake, own your mistake and say, wait a minute, I tried this leadership thing. I think I'm best served being a subject matter expert over here, and you need to find someone else to be a leader. I've had people come to me and say that. I respect that, right? Because what that leaves is a whole damaged village that you have to go and clean up behind.
Yep.
I think that's where it's important to have those alternative career paths for success. Because if you are going to be that player that's the individual contributor, how do we stretch your skills wide, right? So that you feel as if you're moving without, because sometimes to your point, what happens is the only way to move is to move up. And you end up in a position that you're the boss everybody hates.
Hi, I'm Crystal. I work for Dell. And I had a quick question. Recently, I attended a seminar, I think it was a Catalyst webinar, and it was about women and when we apply for roles in comparison to men. It said that women tend to wait until they have every skill listed in a job description to apply, whereas a guy can have maybe 4 out of the 10.
Yep.
So they look at their belief in their potential versus, women, we have to check every box. And I just wanted to get some insight from you all on pivotal moments where you may have pushed yourself when you didn't necessarily think you were ready for that next step.
I don't know. For me, I'm never ready. Well, part of and growing, I spent 12 and a half years in consulting. And it was always, believe it or not, I learned by fire or death back then, right? So you did know the technology, but you were going to go in and learn and be an expert. And so for me, anytime I get comfortable, and if I know everything, and if I feel like I can check off every box, then it's probably not the job for me, because I know I'm going to be bored. So for me, I've been wired a little different, because if it's all in, then it's like, all right, I can do that in my sleep. I actually do better and perform better when I'm challenged, and I only know 25% of what I'm doing.
Yeah, I've actually psyched myself out of applying for situations, for opportunities in similar situations where, my cube mate at the time, who rarely showed up to work, when he did, he had very little to contribute. I trained him on everything that he knew, and he still didn't know it. And he applied for it, and guess what?
You got it.
Got it. And that was a life lesson because there was no reason that I'm making up numbers, but out of maybe the 15 qualifications, I had 8, 9, and discounted myself for the rest. He had -9. But he was confident in his ignorance. He was confident in his ignorance. So I say all that to say there's never going to be a situation where you know everything. There's never going to be a situation where you have every single skill. You have to believe that the skills that you do have and the resources that you do have, and it's all about being resourceful, right? The resources that you do have are enough. And make friends with people as soon as you get that job. That means that you're going to apply for that job. When you get it, you make friends very quickly so that when you don't have an answer, Michelle McCrae Howard, thank you very much for my answers that I did not have at Macy's. You have allies who can help you out and who can be on that Skype chat with you as you're trying to take this phone call and you're trying to work your way through it. Real talk, real situations. But it's very important that you don't discount yourself and you bring to the table what you have and you go for it. You go for it. You'll surprise yourself at what you're able to take on, what you're able to achieve.
The other thing is to keep in mind that often you read a job announcement, it's a cut and paste that has been there for 10, 15,
We don't know what that job is.
20 years. The job, the role does not look like any of those words that are on the paper. So if you can find the person who had the job before, or you can talk to someone who's worked there, you talk to them, you'd be like, oh, I can do that. Yes, you can, right? So, and then here's the other thing. What you don't know, you can learn.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got time in between the time you fill it out, because they ain't fast with calling you for an interview, right?
To learn it.
So you got time to do the research, to learn it, to take a class and walk in there with the skills on the top of your mind.
That actually. Yeah,
No.
I was just going to say, excuse me. So how I actually fell face first into this industry is exactly that. When Craigslist was relatively, it's sketchy, but there was a point in time where Craigslist was like, you could actually apply to it, and it was actually what they said it
Yeah.
was. It wasn't like a massage parlor. So I applied to a posting for a publishing assistant. And in a previous job, not career, I had worked at a publishing place. So I said, well, I think I can do that. I'll go. So I go, and it's actually, it's on the sales side in digital advertising. It was a company that was selling ad space online for like Runner's World, Women's World, like it was called Rodale Properties. I'm sitting there in that meeting just blinking, and like my slow blink game was on point. I was just like, okay, we're just gonna get through this. And what the skills that I did have, I talked about them. The things that he didn't know, I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. I slow blinked out of it. Get your slow blink game. Slow blink. And he said, I would like to see you again. He said, this was on a Thursday. He said, I would like to see you on Tuesday. And when you come back, bring a PowerPoint and an Excel, because I want to just see the quality of your work. I said, a who and a what? In my mind. I didn't know what PowerPoint or Excel was at that time. I had never worked in it. I left there. I went and found online a class that I could take over the course of a weekend, and I said, at the end of this class, I need to have a PowerPoint, I need to have an Excel document. Don't need to understand it, I could come back for that. I just need to have it, and I need to be able to say that I actually did it. I walked in there on Tuesday with my PowerPoint and my Excel document, and here I am today, many, many years later. But the point is, like, just go for it, go for it. Whatever you need to do, learn it.
Learn it.
And the other thing I was going to say is that I always tell individuals when they come in and they want to think about doing something different, let's talk about what your transferable skills are, right? If you're a great organizer, then I can help you figure out what are 2 or 3 jobs that may allow you to expand upon that. If you're great with people and you're great with customer service, so one of the things that I always do when I look for roles, even though I just take them, is I actually do look for where will my transferable skills allow me to shine. And that's where I get my confidence. I understand how I learn things, and based on my learning style, I go in saying, this is how I learn, this is what I do know, what I'm confident in, and I use that as a backbone for every opportunity.
And I was just going to add, right, it boils down to boldness and confidence. And I'll share this with you. I was a junior in high school. All of my friends had jobs after school. I was applying and nobody would give me a job. 2 of my friends worked at the Wendy's down the street from the school. And I asked them about it. I had applied, they never called me. Applied 2 or 3 times, they never called me. I told my mom, I said, this weekend, I need to go to the Gap to get some brown khaki pants. You had to provide your pants, Wendy's would give you the top. She says, oh, you got hired at Wendy's? I said, yeah, it hasn't happened yet, but it's coming. So we went and we bought the khaki pants. That Tuesday, I called her, I said, Mom, I'm not coming home from school. I'm gonna walk to Wendy's, I'm starting work today. And I'll call you when it's time for you to pick me up.
I love it.
I walked into Wendy's with my brown khaki pants on and a white t-shirt. I said, hi, may I speak to the manager? The manager came up, she's like, yes. I said, hi, my name is Janice Glover. And she says, yeah. I said, I'm supposed to start work today. She says, oh my God, nobody told me we was gonna have a new employee today. I said, they didn't? She says, no. She said, all right, let me go get your application. She went in the back, she came back, she said, I can't find your application. I said, well, if you give me another one, I'll fill it out. I started work at Wendy's that night.
I love it.
So that was the absolute way for us to end this panel.
Yes.
Own your destiny. Own your destiny. Please join me. Did I not tell you this panel would not disappoint? Please join me in thanking these ladies. such a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.